Hey, good evening again, everyone. My name is Amanda. I am the director at Brain Balance of Greater San Diego. I know we have folks from all over the world, actually, that RSVP'd. If you don't mind, just type in the chat box where you're from and how you heard about us. We did get a lot of your questions ahead of time. We may not be able to get through all of them. Some were very specific. So just make sure, again, that you type any questions that you may have in the chat box. You can also message us privately. You don't have to put it as a public post, but you can send that to me, Amanda at Brain Balance. I am going to be moderating the chat box while Meredith presents and controlling the slides for her, okay? So again, I am from Brain Balance. We are honored to have you here tonight. We are a brain training center, and I'm super excited to be a part of this program because we really make a huge impact in so many people's lives, whether it's to improve focus of performance, cognition, emotional regulation, stress, whatever it may be. We can be here to help through this holistic means that again gets to the root of what's going on. And so diagnoses or not, we work with kids, teens, and adults, right, with a variety of behavioral, social, or emotional challenges. And we are based on research and backed by research now. We are officially evidence-based, and I am very proud to share, again, all the success stories that we've had over the years. So sorry, I'm just going to admit everybody into the waiting room real quick. Okay, and so again, what's unique about Brain Balance compared to many other programs is that we get to the root of what's going on. Oftentimes we look at the tip of the iceberg and all these symptoms, which I know a lot of you listed your concerns and challenges in the RSVP registration. And so really understand that there's a lot more going on underneath the surface. And Meredith will be talking a little bit about that as well, okay? So understand, everyone, that there is a progression of development and functioning, and we need this whole foundation to be sound in order for us to perform at our best. Not to be perfect, but to, again, not to struggle, okay? We do a lot of professional workshop trainings for the public, for organizations. Some are free. We do monthly free ones like this one tonight, but we also do, again, professional trainings around the community and beyond, virtually or in person. So let everybody know that may benefit from a neurodiversity presentation, for instance, whether it's a school or your HR department. Please let us know. We have a lot of upcoming events. In February, one of the biggest announcements is our grand opening for our Encinitas Center, but there's also one on learning challenges for the public. So if you are local, please swing on by. Let us know where you're at and what the challenges are, so you can at least get to know us, okay? Please stay connected with us as well. If you learn about Brain Balance through, a different kind of means, not directly through Brain Balance, please follow us at Brain Balance San Diego on all the different social media channels, especially our YouTube channel. That's where this video will be posted, okay? So this is my contact information. I will be following up with every single one of you later on as well. Please make sure you take down Meredith's information, but that will also be in her notes, I guess, and in my follow-up email, okay? All right, so let me stop sharing for just a sec so that I can get to Meredith, and let me just hand it over. She'll do her own introduction, and we'll get going here.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm going to have you actually go ahead and share the screen when you're ready, Amanda. But I will start with an introduction as well. Thank you. So I'm talking about one of my favorite things tonight, which is anxiety. And a lot of times it's a trigger for behavior, but we don't really understand or know how that comes about. So that's what I'm here to talk about tonight, because I think a lot of times we get in these situations where we're not fully understanding the source of the problem and how to address it. Next slide, thank you. So a little bit about me. I've been in education for about 15 years. I started as a teacher, and then I worked as a psychologist for over the past 10 years. I've worked in districts throughout Southern California. I'm also a parent. I have a 2-year-old, very spunky 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old who's in first grade. It's been really humbling after being in the schools for so long to be in the parent situation now. So I'm really enjoying it, and also developing a further empathy for parents than I already had in the school system. And so one thing that I really enjoyed when I was in the schools is working with children from preschool through college age. I currently work with students of the same range, preschool through college age in my private practice. I've had recognition at district level and at the county level for working with students with disabilities. And one of my passions is empowering students. And their families. So I really like to help families and students understand if they have a diagnosis or they have unique learning strengths and unique learning challenges and neurodiversity, and understanding what that means so that they can understand and self-advocate as they go through school, and their families can advocate for them as they progress through school. And I also continue to work with a variety of schools and educational therapy companies, as well as places like Brain Balance, who provide additional therapies that our clients really benefit from. I also specialize in childhood anxiety, which is why I'm talking about it tonight, ADHD, autism, and dyslexia. I have 2 locations, well, technically 3 if you count Zoom. I have a location in San Diego. I work for a company called Achieve Concierge, like Amanda mentioned. We're a mental health group that provides a variety of services, from psychiatry to counseling to therapies for depression. We provide medication management, access to nurse practitioners, even Pilates instructors, all different kinds of resources to help with their overall well-being. And I'm a licensed educational psychologist. I've been in private practice. This is my 4th year. And we also have an office in Temecula where I spend some of my time as well. And so I rotate between the San Diego and Temecula office, as well as having telehealth services through Zoom. The website, if you Google Achieve Concierge, the direct link is on this website or on this presentation. But if you go to achieveconcierge.com, you'll find my name and you can see the background information. Some of it I already shared, but I also have some resources and things that you can look up if you go to my page through Achieve Concierge. My email is there, my office and direct line. And then I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Mrs. G, the LEP. If you want to follow, I post a lot of content on their stories with advice about how to support your child, how to navigate common issues such as anxiety. Just a disclaimer, this presentation isn't intended for like diagnosis or to be substituted for professional medical advice. This is an educational training. If you have specific treatment or diagnosis or advice that you're seeking, definitely consult with your mental health professional or a provider who's appropriately trained to address your questions in an individual way. So some of the services I provide assessment, meaning I do a lot of diagnostic testing. I do what we call psychoeducational assessment, where we look at the brain, academics, and then emotional and behavioral abilities. We put that all together to see, does a child have a diagnosis? Does a student, it could be preschool to college age, so it might be an adult, have a diagnosis that we need to identify? I specialize in diagnosing ADHD, autism, anxiety, and learning disorders like dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia. I also provide IEE assessments. It's an independent education evaluation. And IEE means that if you've had your child evaluated by the school for an IEP and you disagree with the assessment findings, you can request a assessment to be done by an objective assessor, meaning someone outside the district, to come in and do an assessment and then give recommendations based on their assessment. And that's one of the things that I do. I've done IEEs for students in districts around the county, from Scenic Unified, a lot of some of the North County districts, some in the South Bay as well. And so I've really enjoyed that. I also provide executive functioning assessment. I'm going to talk about executive functioning a little more, but it's really about if our brain is an orchestra. It's like the conductor of the brain. It's the front of our brain that helps us plan, attend, problem solve, self-regulate, remember information, a lot of the things that we need to do daily. And so a lot of times students come to me and they need help with time management, they need help with organization, they need help with memory strategies, how to prioritize, initiate tasks, things like that. I also do parent coaching. So if you're looking for support on how to help your children at home, or if you're trying to figure out the best way to talk to your child about their neurodiversity, I help with those conversations very often. And I also, because being in the schools, I help with IEP and 504 plans and preparation if you need help. And I also work with an advocate named Megan Irwin who can attend meetings with you as well. I also provide counseling and I work on executive functioning, self-regulation, and self-advocacy strategies. I really want students to feel empowered and be able to feel like they can ask for what they need when they need it. I also provide mental health counseling where I use often what's called CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, to teach kids coping strategies to manage their emotions. And then one thing I've started recently, which has been a lot of fun, is social skills groups. I started them at the Temecula location. So I'm working with kids on how to help them engage in play, conversations, and group activities using a research-based curriculum. And I'm hoping to open some in San Diego soon once my schedule allows for that. So just to give us kind of a baseline definition of anxiety, I like to start with common language. So anxiety can be defined as a feeling of worry, nervousness, unease, typically about an upcoming event or something with an uncertain outcome. So this feeling of uncertainty often makes people uncomfortable. So anytime something's unknown, someone might be uncomfortable, but when it becomes something that is causing an overwhelming feeling of worry, nervousness, feeling like they're kind of shutting down or they're in fight mode or freeze, that's when we know there's a level of anxiety. Do we need it? Yes, we do. You know, we need anxiety to meet deadlines, show up to work, to pay our bills, you know, to follow laws, to check things off our to-do list, to make sure we're safe and avoid danger. You know, I'm going to talk about the brain and why it's such an important part when we look at anxiety, because our brain can perceive things as a threat that aren't a true threat, but our brain and body will react that way. And that's really important to know about when you're working with someone with anxiety, because you are working with someone who is in a primitive state and isn't able to access the thinking part of their brain. So just to give you some background on anxiety, you know, it's a problem when it's interfering with everyday situations in your child's life. One of the common questions I get is, how do we know the anxiety is a problem? Are they able to get to school? You know, or are they coming late because of their anxiety? Are they engaging in behaviors such as arguing or being non-compliant? Are they running away? Are they freezing and shutting down? Those are signs of anxiety. Is it happening to where you can't get homework done? You can't get through a meal? They're unable to have friends and go to social events. These are all things to consider. How much is it hindering your child's life? Everyday situations that it impedes, you're probably looking at a more significant case of anxiety and likely need to consult with a mental health professional. 30% of people feel anxiety at some point in their lives. So, you know, we all feel it at some point, and it doesn't necessarily become a disorder or significantly impeding us. It may be situational. If you're going through moving, starting a new job, getting married, divorce, having kids, those are all times when people are going to feel anxiety. Now, this one, 90% of health complications that are related to stress. This one I put in here because, you know, sometimes we might downplay anxiety. Oh, like I'm just stressed today, or oh, I'm just tired. We'll be fine. I'll move on. But a lot of times, the more we have anxiety, the more our body is internalizing it, and it can turn into a health complication. Our body and brain are very connected. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. It's a book about trauma, and it's about how our body can kind of almost absorb trauma or anxiety to the point where it can lead to cancer, it can lead to heart complications, it can lead to certain health disorders that really impact our life. So it's really important to get it addressed because, you know, it's not just mental health, it's your overall well-being and physical health too. Anxiety disorders are most common type of mental health disorder we see in childhood. It's about 8% of the population for children and adolescents. About 60% of children ages 6 through 10, ages 3 through 17, that makes more sense. 6 and 10 children, receive anxiety treatment. So we want to see that number to be much higher. 60% is definitely not enough. And a lot of kids go undiagnosed or untreated, and that can lead to stressors later on in life. And oftentimes anxiety can be comorbid. Comorbid means you have a diagnosis of more than one thing. So anxiety can sometimes go hand in hand with ADHD, depression, or other mental health and behavioral disorders. I also see it with learning disorders as well, sometimes like dyslexia, dysgraphia, or dyscalculia, reading, writing, or math disorders. Sometimes in school, I see it when children are older, getting into the upper grades, like upper elementary, middle school, and high school. Oftentimes they start to realize that if they have ADHD or learning disorder or another behavioral disorder, mental health disorder, that they're not doing things at the same level as their peers. And that can cause a lot of anxiety. They may notice in reading, oh, I don't read aloud as well as my peers. I don't comprehend as well as my peers. This is making me nervous. Now I'm nervous when I have to read aloud in class. I'm nervous when I have to do anything related to reading. And then sometimes that could become spill over into other parts of their life where we need to provide intervention for anxiety. There's different types of anxiety disorders. One of the most common ones we think of is generalized anxiety disorders. It's really triggered by this uncertainty or things that are unknown. So it's really having anxiety over in a variety of situations throughout the day or the person's life. Panic disorder is specific in you can feel loss of control. You can get these panic attacks where, you might feel dizzy. You might have rapid breathing. You kind of just shut down and almost feel like things might be caving in on you. And it's a high level of distress very quickly. There are also certain disorders like separation anxiety disorder, where a child may have difficulty separating. Most commonly, we see separation anxiety between 18 months and 5 years old. It's usually when children are going to daycare, preschool, elementary school for the first time. Parents are leaving them and, they're trying to figure out, are they coming back? Is this place safe? So that's very common. Sometimes we see that the anxiety continues beyond that age range. And that's when sometimes we're looking at a separation anxiety disorder where a child doesn't want to be left alone without the parent or a certain adult for any period of time. There's also phobic disorders, and that can be excessive fears about a certain stimuli or situations. So for example, if, you may have someone who is really afraid of dogs. They may have a phobia. Every time they see a dog, they get so upset because when they were a child, they were bit by a dog. And, even seeing a picture of a dog makes them uncomfortable, even someone talking about it. And it might only be about dogs, but it might really impede them. They don't want to go outside. They don't want to go to a park. They don't want to go to a friend's house if there's a dog. They see the dog on the street. They might feel really anxious and kind of maybe lose control of their emotions. Those kind of things will be a specific phobic disorder. And then we have obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD. And so that's, a fixation on impulses, thoughts that can lead to rituals or obsessive behavior. So typically some sources, a lot of them, mostly like older sources, used to say that OCD isn't really an onset till age 25. But what we're finding is 1% to 3% of children develop OCD, and the usual age of onset is about 10 years old, but it can be as early as 5 to 6 years old. Just like any other disorder, early intervention is really key. And so keeping an eye on certain behaviors, if your child is fixated on them or becoming really ritualistic and it's becoming hard to leave the house or do daily activities, definitely reach out to a mental health professional. So there are common triggers for anxiety. So new situations is kind of a more obvious one. So, if a child has anxiety about going new places, especially places with crowds, let's say they're nervous about going to Disneyland for the first time. While most kids might be excited, maybe your kid is nervous because it's somewhere they've never been. There's lots of people. You can get ahead of it by having the child preview things, looking at pictures online, reading books about Disneyland. kind of being a reporter and interviewing someone about Disneyland, watching videos, getting any kind of input they can, making a plan of where they're going to go, look at a map of Disneyland, decide where they're going to eat. Anything you can do to give them a sense of control and demystify, meaning making the situation, giving them more knowledge, the more you'll reduce their anxiety. Unknown plans or changes. So that, sometimes that can't be helped. That's life. But the more we can be consistent and provide routines for our children, the less likely they'll be triggered by anxiety. When we have plans and routines in place, like a sleep, meals, and school and activities around set times, and there's a routine, how we get dressed in the morning, how we leave the house, how we organize our clothes and shoes, all these kind of things, it really helps reduce those unknown plans and changes. If there are changes, letting them know right away and explaining what's going to happen will help reduce their anxiety. Sometimes unclear, inconsistent expectations can impact our kids. So a lot of times what I see when I say unclear expectations is really saying things that are too long for our kids' brains to comprehend. So the average adult can remember 4 to 7 things that you tell them. So a child can remember far less than that. So I usually tell parents, keep your directions to 2 to 3 words and chunk them. So if you want your child to go upstairs and get their backpack and sweatshirt for school, you're going to say, go upstairs, backpack, sweatshirt, go. And then you want them to say up on the way up the stairs, backpack, sweatshirt, backpack, they grab their backpack, a sweatshirt, and then they go downstairs. So the more you make things like kind of these bite-sized pieces for them to chew and remember, the more they're going to be able to consistently follow your requests, and then you're going to have more clear expectations for them. Sometimes when demands are too high, a child can have anxiety as well. This can happen in school, or this can happen at home when maybe it's beyond their developmental range. Maybe they're having a hard time in writing and they're asked to write a paragraph when they can barely write a sentence. The demand might be too high. If we reduce the demand, meaning lower the expectation, we can lower the anxiety. And sometimes if it's just about the anxiety and not a skill, once the child feels the demand is lowered and it's more achievable to start, they'll oftentimes meet that original demand. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a child can write a paragraph, but they really just don't want to write. You say, let's just start with a sentence. So you help them, you give them a way to start the sentence, they write that, and then they finish it. Well, the next thing you know, they've maybe written a paragraph, even though you just asked them to write one sentence, because a lot of times there's anxiety about just even getting started and feeling like something's too complicated. Unmet basic needs is another one. Sometimes we are on the go. We have school, and then we have basketball practice, and then we have a tutor, and then we have dinner, and then we're going to a friend's house. There's so many things that we're jamming into our schedule. Sometimes our kids or even our basic needs go unmet. We might be tired. We might be thirsty. We might be hungry. We might be too hot or too cold. Those things can really trigger anxiety and cause us to have meltdowns as adults or as children. So we really want to make sure our basic needs are met for ourselves and our kids. Negative feedback can also trigger anxiety. So using phrases like, stop doing that, or don't do this. When we say what we don't want a child to do, we're not giving them what we want them to do. So we want to change the language and keep it positive. So we're directing them to what we want to see. So instead of stop yelling, please use a quiet voice. So we want to make sure that we're phrasing things positively with what we want to see versus what we don't want to see. And then the last one was previous experiences. Sorry, I told you to change the slide too soon. I apologize, Amanda. Previous experiences can also trigger anxiety. So going back to the example, if someone's afraid of a dog, seeing a dog, being around a dog might trigger their anxiety because before they were bit by a dog when they were a child. Okay, now you can move it. Next slide, thank you. Awesome, okay. So there's common symptoms of anxiety in children, and there's uncommon symptoms. I'm gonna talk about the common symptoms first. So common symptoms that we might think of about anxiety in children is having recurring fears, worrying about routines of everyday life. Is it going to be safe to go to school? Am I going to be okay going to so-and-so's house for a play date? Those kind of things. Physical complaints often happen with anxiety, like stomach aches or headaches, things like that. Remember, I mentioned earlier, your body is aware of your anxiety, oftentimes before the brain. So when you start to feel a stomach ache, a headache, or your child reports a stomach ache or a headache, you want to think, okay, What's coming up that they might be worried about? Is there a birthday party? Is there a big test tomorrow? Is there a big game that they're nervous about? Trouble concentrating is also one too. Sometimes it can be mistaken for inattention or lack of focus, but trouble concentrating could be because the person is so consumed by their anxiety that they're having a really hard time focusing. Trouble sleeping is another one too. Our brain has the most downtime at night. So you know, if you're a parent or an educator, or, you know, you have just been on this earth any amount of time, you know, that feeling when you lay down and your mind is going a million miles an hour. That can happen with our children as well. Having trouble falling asleep, having trouble staying asleep, or having trouble sleeping into the appropriate amount of time. And sometimes that might mean that by the time they do get to sleep, they wake up really late, even they went to bed really early, because they couldn't get into that deep sleep because they were worried about things. Fear of social situations is also really common. So that might be being scared of going to a birthday party, might be being scared of being around crowds, that they might get lost. It could be scared of going to someone's house they've never been to before, or a new school. Fear of leaving home. Goes along a lot typically with separation anxiety. And it also can go along with, you know, if there's been a change in the family, if there's been a divorce, or there's been a death in the family, or any kind of major environmental changes. There might be a fear of leaving home, and worry that things might change or become different if they aren't where they're most comfortable, which is often at home. Also, a lack of response to questions. So kids can shut down. They can, you know, seem like they're ignoring a question. You know, and one of the worst things you can say to someone who's shutting down is, "Why are you ignoring me? Answer the question." So we really want to, I'll talk more about strategies of what to do when those things are happening. Fear of separating from a loved one. I kind of touched on that when we talked about fear of leaving home. And then refusing to go to school. Since the pandemic, we've definitely seen a spike in school refusal. And more times than not, it's related to anxiety. You know, I've worked with families that maybe what started as, oh, they don't really like to go to school, they get kind of nervous, but I'm able to get them there before the pandemic. For some families has turned into, I don't know how I'm going to get them in the car. I can't get them to school. They're not coming. And they need a lot of help to get their child back on track. So that's one that I've seen a real increase. Less commonly known symptoms of anxiety in children are irritability and anger. So sometimes we forget that fight, flight, or freeze is common when our brain is overwhelmed and we're shutting down. So if we're in that fight, flight, or freeze, fight is being irritable, being angry. It can include non-compliance, meaning not following a direction, either passively, like ignoring the direction and not doing it, or flat out saying no, more overt. Kicking, hitting, punching, or spitting, any kind of reaction that's physical contact with another person can be a trigger, a symptom of anxiety. So if you have a child who's kind of going from what we call like 0 to 60, and all of a sudden they're hitting and kicking you, and you just ask them to do their homework, and you're like, how did we get in this mess? You know, it's not that they're necessarily they're not trying to be a bad kid. Ross Greene is a really famous psychologist, and he said kids do well if they can. So it's much easier to obey the direction and move on with our lives and get to access rewards for obeying the directions, like, you know, playing with our friends or video games or something else. And so when kids are communicating with their behavior, even if the communication is hitting, kicking, or pinching or punching or whatever it is, we have to recognize they're communicating they're not okay. And they're likely feeling a lot of anxiety about whatever the task is at hand. Screaming or yelling is often also a symptom of anxiety. And then destruction of property can be too. So sometimes kids in schools or, you know, in the community get kind of typecast as being like oppositional, really defiant, being kind of bad kids. But a lot of times when when I go in and do an evaluation of these children, a lot of times there's a mental health disorder, and more times than not, it involves anxiety. And, you know, their body and brain are feeling threatened, and that's why they're reacting in such an extreme way. And that's why they're often in this fight part of the fight, flight, or freeze in their brain and body. This next one, Amanda, you should be able to click on the link. If not, I can send it in the chat. Let me send it to you in the chat so you can click on it. This video is about what we call flipping our lid. Oh, perfect. You have it. Awesome. Thank you. Can you put your volume on, Amanda? So we can hear it on the computer.
Yeah, the volume is on. I think it's just how does it translate to the video said. So I don't know how to do that quickly. How about I put the link? Oh wait, share sound. Okay, how about this?
Want to play soccer at lunchtime, but when the bell rings,
Perfect.
you can't find your shoes. When you
So I'm gonna have, you mind starting it over? Sorry, thank you. So this is about our brain and how we react to anxiety. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me mute myself.
You really want to play soccer. Kids want to know. Imagine that you really want to play soccer at lunchtime, but when the bell rings, you can't find your shoes. When you finally get out to the field, the teams have been picked and it's too late for you to play. Maybe you got so mad that this small problem became a big problem in an instant. When we lose control of our emotions like this, we can call it flipping your lid, kind of like the way a pot might do if it was too full and too hot. A little while later, after you've cooled down, you might even feel sad when you realize that when you had a big reaction to a little problem, you could have hurt someone's feelings. What if I told you that this happens to everyone? Your parents, friends, teachers, and everyone else you know can flip their lid and lose control of their emotions sometimes. We all need to work on managing our feelings. Have you ever wondered why we can have such a hard time keeping our emotions under control? It can be really tough being a kid these days. There's just so much going on every day, at home, at school, even after school. Sometimes it's hard to keep a lid on things, and we act in ways that are not kind or caring, even though we don't mean to be hurtful. There are so many situations that we encounter every day that can cause our emotions to bubble up. Maybe you felt upset or frustrated when you were working on a problem or activity at school and just can't seem to get it right. Maybe something unexpected or embarrassing happened to you in front of your friends. Maybe you had something important to say, but didn't get a chance to say it. These and many, many more situations can cause both kids and adults to flip their lids. So why does this even happen? Well, it has to do with the way our amazing human brains work to help keep us safe. This is your brain, the part of your body that controls everything you do. Let's take a closer look at the parts of the brain and how they can work together to help us keep a lid on things. The brain is a pretty complicated organ, so we're going to use our hand to help us visualize what's happening up there. Let's imagine that our brain has an upstairs and a downstairs. Here, where our thumb is called the midbrain. This is where our emotions and memories are created and stored. Below that is your brainstem. The brainstem controls the things our bodies do that we don't have to think about, like breathing. It also controls our automatic reactions to certain situations. For example, if you touch a cup with hot tea in it and it's too hot, your downstairs brain feels the pain and will pull your hand away to stop you from getting burnt. It's an automatic reaction. You don't have to stop and think about what to do. Or imagine you're out on a hike and a bear wanders onto the path. Your brain doesn't stop and think, what kind of bear is it? Is it friendly? Your downstairs brain notices that you feel scared. It takes charge and in a split second decides whether or not you should fight, fly, another word for run away, or freeze. Because of the way our downstairs brain reacts to these situations, we can think of it as our emotional brain because it reacts instantly without needing to think things through. It's always ready to take charge in any situation to help keep you safe. So if this is our downstairs brain, then this part where the back of our hand and fingers are can be seen as our upstairs brain. It's called the cerebral cortex. This part of our brain helps us think logically, act with kindness, and think about how others might be feeling. It's also the problem-solving part of our brain. It helps us to think of possible solutions to a problem and decide which one is best. The upstairs brain is our thinking brain. Your upstairs and downstairs brain don't work alone. Your brain is set up so that the upstairs and downstairs brain can communicate with itself. It sends messages from section to section all the time about what our bodies feel and need. Let's take a closer look at our brain fist. Where our fingertips are is the logic and reasoning part of the brain that springs into action when we have a problem to solve, and usually it does a great job of doing it. But sometimes it can have a hard time solving a problem if the emotional brain and thinking brain can't communicate well enough. This can happen if your emotions get too overwhelming and your downstairs brain decides that this situation might be dangerous, even if it isn't really. And we all know what happens when our downstairs brain thinks you're in danger. It triggers our fight, flight, or freeze reflex. Our emotions start to bubble up, and then suddenly everything boils over. We flip our lids. This can look like a scary, angry reaction, or it might be crying or running away from a problem. Now that we've flipped our lids, see how far away our fingertips are from the midbrain? When our lids are flipped, our upstairs and downstairs brain can't talk to each other. Our emotions have become too strong, and we can't think clearly and can't solve the problem in a peaceful way. So what can we do to stop us from flipping our lid? Well, it all starts with realizing that we're about to flip our lid, and then turning down the heat so it doesn't happen. Remember that soccer game we talked about at the beginning of the video, and you were really upset and didn't get to play? Maybe you felt your tummy rumble, or you felt your face getting hot? Did your heart start to pound, and did you feel your hands start to clench? Were you frustrated, disappointed, and angry? These types of strong feelings are all indicators that you might be close to flipping your lid. If you feel this start to happen, it's a good idea to walk away, take some deep breaths, and look for an adult to talk to before you flip your lid. It might be a parent, grandparent, coach, teacher, or another trusted adult nearby. They can help you with strategies to solve the problem once you've calmed down enough for your upstairs brain to be ready to do some peaceful problem solving. If you do flip your lid, those same trusted adults can offer you some time and space to cool down before you start to problem solve together. Once your upstairs brain is back in charge, you can share your story and get some help. Using I statements can help you to tell an adult what you need. I need a hug. I need you to listen to what I have to say. I need another chance. I need some alone time. I need a walk. I need you to see that I can do well. Learning more about the brain and how it works can really help us to understand our emotions and to be peaceful problem solvers. When we listen to our bodies and our brains, we can turn the challenges of being a kid into opportunities to learn and grow. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in learning more about the brain and
Amanda, you can stop. Thanks. So I really like that video to show to kids as well as families, because it explains the brain in a way that kids can understand, and also, gives us information as adults as to why our kids get in this state where feels like there's no way to calm them down. So on the next slide, I'll talk about the body, the brain, and anxiety. So when it was talking about the brain using our hand, we have the feeling and thinking part. And when a child or anyone is escalated, the amygdala and hippocampus, which are like in the thumbs part of this visual, the amygdala is that part of your brain that is that part of the fight, flight, or freeze. It's that determining the threat, and it talks to the hippocampus, which is your part of your memories. So your memory, is there something in your past that lets us know this is a threat? So kind of like when she gave the video gave a visual of them touching something hot. Okay, our body and brain automatically know, oh, that's hot. I need to pull my hand away. It's automatic danger. And if there's been a previous experiences where we've touched something that was hot, our brain remembers and knows to pull our hand away. So when we're escalated, the thinking part of our brain is off. So it's not connected. We can't reason. The frontal lobe, that prefrontal cortex, that part that's in purple more pink on yellow on the screen, that part is responsible for our thinking, our decision-making, our emotions, our impulse control. And that is disconnected or almost like turned off is the way I like to explain it, from the emotional part or the fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain. And the reason that matters is because that is not a time we can have problem-solving conversations with our kids. That's not a time we can ask them about what's going on. They are not able to communicate in a way that they are when they're calm and that thinking brain is turned on for them. There's even studies that suggest that IQ and comprehend and reasoning actually drops when people are escalated or their ability to problem solve. And that prefrontal cortex, the one that's responsible for like executive functioning that I mentioned earlier, that decision making, impulse control, all of those things, it doesn't even start to develop till age 5, and then it doesn't fully develop till age 30. So that's why, you know, those toddler years are so brutal, where there's like, feels like it's a roller coaster of emotions, because they really haven't developed that thinking part of their brain, that prefrontal cortex, to start to control those emotions yet. And that's kind of why school starts when it does. So I'm going to go over some strategies. My favorite strategy and the easiest one is breathing. So you may be like, oh, breathing. Okay, I get it. We all need to do that when we're upset. But it is proven through science as the #1 way to regulate the brain and body. So there are different breathing strategies. One of the ways that is most effective is if you know how to breathe. So a lot of times, so if you were to sit up right now, go ahead and take a breath in. So if I were to take a breath in before becoming a psychologist, my chest would go up and down. If that was the case for you, you're actually breathing wrong if you want to regulate your body. So when we are breathing to regulate our body, meaning calm our brain and body down, we want to breathe from our belly. You may have even heard sometimes in schools or, you know, with psychologists, they call it belly breathing. And the reason they call it belly breathing is because your belly should actually go out. And then when you're breathing in, and then as you breathe out, your belly should go in. And the reason for that is because a larger part of your lungs are able to be accessed through the diaphragm and belly versus the top of our chest. A lot of times we think that our lungs are really at the top of our chest, but they're really below that. We think that because when we go to the doctor, they say, you know, they put the stethoscope on the top of your chest and say, take a deep breath. And you're like, oh, that must be where my lungs are. You know, another thing too, is when we start to sit in school or sit in desks more, we actually start to breathe more from the top of our lungs versus the belly breathing. So a lot of kids that are school age will start to breathe from their chest, which is less effective. If you watch a toddler or a baby, their bellies get big and small, and that they're doing the regulating way of breathing. And so what I recommend is when you do breathing is that you sit up, you kind of let your belly hang out, which us women are always told to suck in, but let your belly hang out and relax. And when you breathe in, your belly should go out, because your diaphragm and your lungs are being accessed. So your diaphragm is pushing out. And then you hold it for 4 seconds. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and then breathe out for 8. And the reason you do that is because you are trying to regulate your body to get enough oxygen and slowly release it so your brain and body can calm down. And that thinking part of your brain can reconnect with the downstairs or feeling part of your brain. There's a couple other strategies that I recommend for the littles. Birthday candles is one. You can hold up the birthday candles and tell them to blow them out. And they can go through all 5 fingers. You can go through 10 if you need them to. Another one could be like pizza breathing or hot cocoa breathing or soup. Any kind of hot food works, where they breathe it in, smell it. Oh, it smells so good. And then we blow out. And you can have them repeat that several times to calm down. When I'm teaching kids how to breathe, what I love to do, or a way to get to know, are they using their bellies the right way to breathe and access the full capacity of their lungs? Have them lay on their back and put like a cup or a little stuffed animal on their belly and tell them to breathe in. As they breathe in, the object should go up, and as they breathe out, the object should go down. That's how you know they're belly breathing. And if they're not, you can teach them. There's also some ways to go about addressing triggering behavior. So when your child is going through this, often what we see is like a cycle of behavior. So first thing you want to do is be able to recognize it. So those common triggers I talked about, be aware of those. You might have specific ones that are unique to your child that you've kind of picked up on. Identify what's changed in their behavior. What are they doing to let you know they're not okay? All behavior is communication. So if there's a change and they're showing anxious behaviors, they're letting you know that something's not right for them. The first thing you want to do is reconnect after you've recognized it. That can be just letting them know you're here, because sometimes they might be so deep in that anxiety or behavior, they're not even really aware that you're present and available. So gently touching their shoulder, letting them know that you're here to listen, that you're showing, that you can show them empathy. You can even tell them about the emotion you're seeing and the observations. You can say something, it looks like you're upset. I can see your body tensing up. You're breathing really quickly. So then you're letting them know, I see you, I hear you, this is what I'm noticing. Then you want to teach them to regulate. So research has shown us that co-regulation is a really effective strategy. So co-regulation is you are modeling breathing, you are giving them ways to regulate, offering a hug, offering them to take a break, showing them ways that you calm down as an adult. Then the other one is redirect. So after you've given them ways to calm down, let them know you're there, notice the change in their behavior. You want to make a plan for what's the next thing that you're going to do, getting them able to either change the activity, redirecting with humor is one of my favorite things to do. Talk about an inside joke, talk about a funny movie you guys saw the other day that they couldn't stop laughing about. Or give them a preferred job that makes them feel successful like a leader instead of feeling anxious and really overwhelmed. So, and being able to be flexible too. You might have to change the plan if they're having, a hard time. You may need to leave the restaurant. You may need to leave the birthday party and take a break and walk around the block before you come back. So being flexible is really key. And that redirect will help them become calm, so that they can do something and feel successful and feel like they're back on track, so that later they can reflect with you. So the reason this one's on a separate slide is because we don't want to reflect with a child until they are truly calm and the situation has passed. We always want to validate their feelings, ask for clarification about things that happened, and then make a plan with them. What are we going to do next time? Because what we don't want to do is wait till they're anxious and stressed the next time to then try to make the plan happen. So we always want to reflect so that next time we have this plan in place. And it's really great to always talk about what that plan is before you go into a situation that might be triggering. So if a child has a fear of birthday parties or being around a lot of other people, before you go to a birthday party, you might say, remember last time when we had when you were feeling really anxious at a birthday party, we talked about it later and we decided we were going to go for a walk. We were going to go take a break in the car, or you were going to come squeeze my hand to let me know you needed help. And remind them of those strategies. You go into the party, you can even have a visual signal with your child. I've worked with teachers and parents of creating a signal because sometimes it's hard for them to share what makes them anxious. So even coming up with maybe our plan next time is you give me a peace sign to let me know you need help, or a thumbs up or thumbs down on how you're feeling, so I know to come over and check in with you. So having a plan, reminding of that can be really helpful. Tips and tricks, I think something that's really come a long way over the last, decade that I've been in this profession is that all feelings are valid. I think before we kind of were like, don't be anxious, don't be angry, but those feelings are totally valid. That's all okay. It's what we do about the feeling that is what we're often working on with children. Remember, avoid those phrases with negative language like stop crying, or saying things that they might feel is discounting their feelings, like what's wrong with you, you're fine. You're telling them that how they're feeling is not accurate or doesn't matter, and that you're replacing it with how you think they should feel. And then that can lead a child to think, well, my feelings aren't valid, I shouldn't share them with others. And that can lead to a whole host of problems later. Educating children about feelings and coping strategies. A lot of times parents are like, they can't tell me how they're feeling. They're not able to tell me in the moment, or they're not able to communicate what they need. Working with them on what feelings are, what different types of feelings mean, how to identify them, learning coping strategies, all these things while they're calm and ready to hear and learn and think will help them later when they're escalated, recall those things more readily. And providing examples from your own life is really important. As much as, kids will tell you that, they might say that you can't do these things, or you might say like, oh, mom, you're so lame, or you're not cool, or whatever, they still think you walk on water. You're their parents. So, they might not realize that you have anxiety in your own life. So talking about times, oh, I was really worried at work today. I was really anxious. So I did this and that and the other, and then I felt a lot better. So humanizing yourself can really help too, because a lot of times as parents, we hold our emotions in to try to save face for our kids, but they don't get to see us having emotions that they have. And they think that we're always in control, but we all know we're not. And then giving yourself self-care too. So even if it's 10, 15 minutes a day, whatever you need to be able to regulate yourself. Co-regulation is really important. Your child will not regulate if you are dysregulated yourself. So making sure you're ready and calm is really, really important. So if that means you take 15 minutes to yourself before you enter a situation that might be triggering, like homework, that's okay. Do that so you can feel ready and right to regulate with them. Some additional interventions and therapies, in addition to learning about anxiety with this training and working on strategies with your child at home, oftentimes it takes a village. So you might need a team of additional interventions or therapies to help you. Amanda talked earlier about brain balance and having a brain body wellness program to help your child really integrate with the connections in their brain and their body, and understanding how to make these new neurological connections so that they can better self-regulate, pay attention, manage stress. Also, a lot of times kids benefit from therapy or counseling. A lot of times cognitive behavior therapy is a common treatment or protocol for anxiety, teaching kids about thoughts, actions, and feelings, and how they're all connected, and how we can change our thoughts, and then that can change our feelings and our actions. Medication is also something that may be a part of a child's intervention if they have anxiety. We have a psychiatrist, a couple of psychiatrists at Achieve. One of them is Jashida Namdar. She's one of the founders of Achieve Concierge, and she works with kids. She's really well known in the psychological community around San Diego. And then also at home, there's different things you can do too. Meditation, usually when a child, I would say about even as young as 6 or 7 can try meditations. If you may have heard of apps like Headspace or Calm. Insight Timer is another one. It's for like a little bit older, typically though. Calm app has a whole section for kids. There's meditative bedtime stories. There's short, quick little meditations. Meditations really teaches kids to be okay with being in their head and being in that space while doing nothing. So much of the day we're on screens, we're distracting ourselves, we're doing, and being able to sit and be in this quiet with your brain. And the more comfortable you get with that, the more likely they feel comfortable when they have these uncomfortable feelings, and identifying it, because they're more in tune with their brain and body. Daily well-being is also really important. Sorry, almost done. Nutrition, exercise, having a good sleep hygiene, screen time, not having screen time at least 2 hours before bed. Studies show if it's less than 2 hours before bed that kids are on the screen, it's harder for them to fall asleep and get good quality sleep. And then having consistent schedules also helps with anxiety, like I mentioned earlier. And then you don't have to do it alone. If you're seeing anxiety in your child at home, reach out to the school. You can request something called an SST, which is like a student study team, where the teachers will sit with you and talk with you about strategies and interventions they can try and that you can try. Your child, if they have a disability or any type of diagnosis, they may need something like a 504 plan where they have certain accommodations at school, like extra time on tests or copies of notes. Or they might need something more that's more intensive, like an IEP, where they have access to special education intervention services. So it can really be a range, but it's good to have kind of a mosaic of interventions and things you're doing in addition to home work at home as a family. If you want more information about the brain, body, and anxiety, I'm happy to pass along videos, book recommendations, more examples of breathing exercises. And I also give free consultations of up to 30 minutes via phone or Zoom to talk more specifically about your child's needs. I did see some of the areas of concern that were specific to certain kids and ages and things you're seeing. I'd be happy to talk with you more about that and let you know what are some next steps that your family could take to help remedy that.
Awesome. Thank you, Miss Meredith. That was wonderful. You are good with your time. We still got a few more minutes. So I know we have a lot of questions that haven't been asked and people have been messaging me privately. So again, for everyone, you can either put it in the chat box as a public question, or you can directly send it to me, Amanda at Brain Balance, in the chat box, and we can try to see what we can answer in the next few minutes. So again, I mentioned some of you entered later, but we did have a lot of very specific questions in the registration. So we won't be able to get through everything, but you have Meredith's information here. It will be shared with you once again in our follow-up email with you later this week, along with the link to the presentation. So don't worry. And Meredith just said, there is a free 30-minute consultation as needed as well. So please ask your questions while you have her live right now, or you can hold tight for future reference, okay? So one of the questions I was asked is, what phrases are better to use when helping calm the anxiety? So rather than that negative talk, I think, of, stop crying or you're okay, what are the specific words and language you would practice using?
Great question. I would, depending on your child's like language and abilities, it might be something like, I'm here for you. Let me know when you're ready. I'm here to help. You could offer them a hug. It doesn't even have to be language. It can just be putting out your hands. It can, you can say things like giving them choices. Do you want to take a break? Or do you want to do you want to take a break, or do you want to be alone? Sometimes kids need space. So kind of knowing what your kid likes to do when they're to calm down, giving them those choices, and then also saying, I can tell you're really upset right now and that you need some space. I'm going to be sitting over here. When you're ready, I'm here to help you. And so just being in the room with them, it doesn't always mean you have to say something. Sometimes for kids, the more you say when they're having this, behavior from anxiety, the more escalated, the more anxious they get. So sometimes even just talking to them can be verbally triggering. So sometimes just saying, I'm going to sit over here, and when you're ready, I'm here to help. I've done that in the schools. I've done that with my own children. And, 9 times out of 10, they come over to you within a couple minutes and are ready, just knowing that you're there and you're not going to make more demands or verbal requests from them. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah. And, I went through some of the questions too. I think we answered a lot of the questions about how do you identify anxiety? What are some of the tools? And I really appreciate all those. And sorry, let me put my camera on for everybody else who did not see me yet. Hi, I'm Amanda. I'm the director of Brain Balance. I really, really appreciate those very specific tips that you had all throughout the presentation. So hopefully everybody can access that. Again, I want to respect everyone's time. It's 9 o'clock right now, and I want to respect your time, Miss Meredith. So thank you for being our amazing guest presenter, talking about anxiety and the ways that it can show up in the individual's life. You had a thank you. You're getting a lot of thank yous right now.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. I appreciate you guys spending your time as a parent. I know time without children is very valuable. So I appreciate you spending it with me. And thank you, Amanda and Brain Balance, for having me. I really enjoyed being here and sharing tonight.
Absolutely. And so for those who don't know about us, again, we're very aligned in what we do. That brain-body connection and really understanding the root cause is key. It's not just coping mechanisms, it's understanding what's going on. Hence, the 5 R's that she discussed. I talk about the 3 R's. I break it down a little bit more, but it's so critical to take a step back, really, connect and regulate, and then, tackle it, right? It's not always about problem solving or dismissing. It's such an easy go-to for us as parents. And so I really do commend all of you for being here tonight at 8. Please fill out our very short survey at the end when we give you a follow-up email, because we want to know, does this time work? We've been doing webinars at different times throughout the day, but we've tried this 8 o'clock time because generally speaking, it's after bedtime. So if it works for you, please give me a thumbs up or say yes, so that we know to keep doing it this time. Otherwise, we may do it earlier. So we'll see. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Meredith. We'll send everybody your follow-up afterwards, and we'll go take it from there. Have a good night.
Thank you.